Okay guys, before I get started, hey, welcome back to my channel, and I appreciate you guys hanging out. It's going to be a little bit longer. We're working on this Peltier device, cooling heating box, and I really appreciate you guys hanging out. We'll finish up with this part with getting the box organized and getting all the components in place and getting ready for the wiring. But briefly, I just want to go back over what a Peltier device is in case you're just tuning in. So basically, a Peltier device is a semiconductor filled with PNP, hundreds of them, sandwiched between two pieces of ceramic. And when you apply 12 volts to it, one side gets extremely cold, and the other side will get extremely hot. Now, it'll only perform a difference of approximately 60 degrees. So the further you can take the temperature away from the hot side, the colder the cold side would get. So theoretically, they're saying that you could get a minus 60 on the cold side, providing you could keep the hot side at 0. So in this situation, I just have two heat sinks. One big heat sink on the hot side with a fan attached to it blowing on it, and that is giving me about it's not a great cooling system, so I think I'm sitting right now at around 8 to 12 degrees, which is giving you about a negative 25 to negative 30 on the other side, which isn't terrible, but I'm gonna work on increasing that with a water cooling jacket on the other side. So once you apply the voltage, and by the way, it is variable on the voltage. If you're not getting quite 12 volts, you're not going to get the same differential between the plates. So you want to make sure that you're keeping a very solid 12 volt power source, an actual 12 volt power source, or a battery. So you want to maintain that 12 volts is very important. So what I'm trying to do in this box is completely isolate the hot side from the cold side with some insulation, and keep the heat drawing off of my heat sink, so that I'm maintaining a temperature that's giving me the coldest side possible. And this is just a basic setup right now. I will be doing some modifications to it that I've learned already as we're going along, which I'll share with you guys. Okay, in this diagram here, basically it's a top-down view of how my box is set up right now. So I have an intake hole on one side with a fan drawing actual room temperature air, or whatever, in this case it would be my camper. For my testing, it was at 30 degrees inside my house, or sorry, 20 degrees. So it wasn't optimal. And I did build an actual system that it was enclosed, so that it was getting colder and colder on itself, so that I was able to prove that that worked as well. So basically what I have is the intake fan coming in here, and then I have two Peltiers creating the cold, separated from the hot side, and they're blowing cold air down. And then I have an exhaust, and the pressure from the intake fan is actually pushing the cold air off of the Peltiers, and there's tiny fans on the Peltiers blowing the cold off of it, and so then it'll actually be pushed out by pressure from the intake fan. And on the warm side, I have two fans sitting on the heat sinks, and they're drawing the hot air off of the actual Peltier hot side, and then they're being discharged out the warm exhaust side. Now I am going to increase this blowing out with a fan. I found that it just wasn't enough pressure, but that's what I'll be doing to use to warm. So I'll actually have a switch where I can close off the cold side, and then actually have the warm heat the camper, and I can turn that off and actually have it exhaust outside, and then have the cold side cool off the inside of my camper. So that's the explanation. That's where I'm at, and now I'm gonna get started with building my box. Okay, I do want to talk about this. So you could make this pretty much out of anything, but I wanted to keep it fairly light. So I used cedar planks that I used for my fence, and a piece of scrap plywood I found out in the carport to make these. I planed these to make them nice and smooth and make them a little bit skinnier, and damn, it smells good when you use aromatic cedar. So I just glued this box together. Used a couple pin nails, no screws, because I didn't want to split it all up. And once it was all dried up, Then I went inside. Oh, here's the ceiling, the top. So I took a few of the ceiling board or the cedar boards, and then I put a couple biscuit joiners in them, and then I glued them together. And I laid a big car battery on them to keep it from curling while it was drying, because I don't actually have proper drying racks. So that seemed to work pretty good. I got a nice, reasonably flat top once I was done. It shrunk a little bit, so it wasn't completely around. Once that was all dried up, I siliconed the insides of all the little holes and stuff. This was fence boarding, so I wanted to make sure it was all sealed. Now I'm creating the center piece that separates the hot from the cold. I used a piece of walnut that I had for making some bows, and I just basically found the centers and the size of the tiny Peltier device, and then I just used a drill to kind of drill out the square. I don't have a coping saw or any kind of a scroll saw, so I just used the drill here, as you can see. And then once I had those pieces drilled out and punched out, I used a file to smooth them out and make the edges a little more presentable. And there we are, completed there. And there's the file. And a little bit of X-Acto knife as well. Now this piece is kind of thin. I designed this so that once the Peltiers were in there, I could slide both of them out with the fans, so that if you needed to do some work on it, you didn't have to try and get little tiny screwdrivers in it. You can actually just lift them right out. Okay, then you want to add some thermal conductive paste or heat sink paste, both on the Peltier, which you can see already sitting inside that around the piece of foam, to my cold side heat sink. And then I'm going to screw them together so that they're nice and tight sandwiched. You want to make sure you have a fantastic connection between the two, so that you're actually getting a proper transfer of heat. So now I'm just attaching the heat side sink, now right connecting through to the cold side of the little fan and the little heat sink that I have for the cold side. Now, in the future, I think I'm going to look for a little bit bigger cold side heat sink or cold sink because I want to get a better surface area for my fan to blow on. But for now, for these testing purposes, it's working pretty darn good, but I will modify this. So once that's attached, then I am able to attach the fan to the hot side sink. I'm just adding 4 screws there to the corners, and I found that the fins didn't hold them as tight as I liked, so once I had attached all these, I used my pliers to pinch the fins in a little tighter so that it was a little tighter on the screw. It was a pretty solid connection. I'm pretty happy with it, so you'll see here that I'm just going to pinch the fins a little bit around that screw just to make them a little bit tighter. And anyway, it's a pretty fantastic connection. And there's one of the Peltiers with the cold side sink and fan, and the hot side sink and fan. And now I'm just attaching it to my centerpiece, and I already have one attached here now. So now that those two are in there, I'm just going to put a couple screws. These are self-tapping screws, so that I can screw through the walnut and into the aluminum plate on the heat sink side. So I'll just get those screwed in here. And there's probably a dozen ways you could attach that. You could pre-drill the holes and put a couple nuts or wing nuts or some type of ready rod if you wanted to do it that way. This seemed to be the quickest, and it was pretty efficient. So I got those put in there. There we have it, attached to the center block. Now I've gone ahead and connected a couple of the wires here together just so I could keep them organized. Just the basic red to red, black to black, and then connect them to two main wires so that I could run the main wires over to wherever I was going to put the terminal strips. So there's it, and nice and easy in and out if you need to work on it. I got a cold side and a hot side. Marvelous. Looking good, getting excited. Easy access. Perfect. Okay, now for the intake port. So I just found a 3-inch hole saw that I had laying around, which was probably a little smaller than I would have liked. Maybe a 3.5 would have been better. I just wanted to get that drilled out. And again, I just want to point out, working with aromatic cedar. Smells so nice when you're cutting it. Okay, there we are. So now I'm just going to attach my little fan blade protector. And there's the fan installed on the inside. Just screwed it straight to the board with some nuts using the holes from the fan blade protector. And I might have caught myself. You know, if you don't bleed a little bit, you're not doing it right. Just keep it off the project, you know. Here I installed, it was a flat bar aluminum, because when I drilled the small holes for the switches, the wood kind of broke apart and I didn't like that. So I made a bigger hole, and then I just took a piece of aluminum flat bar, attached the switches to that, and then attached the flat bar to the box. I've also cut the hole for the temperature gauge, and I've also drilled another hole for the outlet for the cold air, and then I put in a little louver in there, which I will eventually paint silver, but for now it's white. So this is where the box is right now, and I still have to drill for the probe and stick the probe outside for the temperature sensors, and then that's pretty much it for here. And we're going to get ready to install all the wiring, which is fairly complicated. I wanted to make sure that was one section and not just cramming this all into one, because the wiring and the diagram I'll have available for you guys. But there, actually, you can see in there, I started adding the terminal blocks just to keep it nice and neat. I mean, you could twist them together and do stuff, whatever. I just wanted easy access, and I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to wire it, whether I wanted the first switch to turn on the first Peltier or just add power to the sensor, which is what I ended up doing. So when you flip the first switch on, you get power to the sensor and to the intake fan, and then when you turn on the second switch, turns on the first Peltier device, and then the third switch turns on the second Peltier device. The fourth one is a secret. We're going to talk about that just as we finish up. And there it is. So okay guys, so that's the building. The lid's done, the box is complete. Stay with me. If you're liking what you're seeing so far, please subscribe. It really helps out a lot. I'd like to do more and more of these, and then start to do some more projects, and really bring some really cool stuff to you guys. So it does help out a lot, and I appreciate you guys hanging out. So if you could subscribe, like, and make some comments. Love the comments. The comments so far have been fantastic. Next segment is going to be the detailed wiring. It's complicated, so I want to make sure it's done properly and easy so you can follow along very, very easily. And like I said, I'll have the schematic available for you guys. I'll probably have it in a PDF that you can download, so it'll be nice and easy. I think that's possible. I'll have to double check. I'm not sure how you can get it. You can probably just PM me, and I could just shoot you the diagram or something, or maybe I could just put it online and you can just take a screenshot of it. I'll figure out something for you guys, and appreciate it very much. I'm Scott from Real Estate Outdoors. Thanks for hanging out.